Hello everybody, Math 11 Quarter 1, Week 1 lesson plans. Let's go through our first week here of Math 11. And we got PowerPoint edition here, and we got a video edition of all these lessons, homeworks, tests, quiz sheets. And name date here, students, on your lesson plan sheet. Let's go right into our Math 11 Quarter 1 Week 1. And what do we got for Week 1? How do we start out Week 1 here for Math 11? Well, we have a pretest. Students, you got to pass a pretest if you want to get into Math 11 Quarter 1. And Math 11 is actually Algebra 2, so that's what you're in for. And for Week 1, here we go. 1.1 Graph Quadratic Functions, Classwork Homework Part 1. 1.1 Graph Quadratic Functions, Classwork Homework Part 2. 1.1 Graph Quadratic Functions, Classwork Homework Part 3. So you got a three-part first section here. And then 1.2 Graph Quadratics Vertex Form, Classwork Homework Part 1. 1.2 Graph Quadratics Vertex Form, Classwork Homework Part 2. And then 1.2 again, Graph Quadratics Vertex Form, Classwork Homework Part 3. And then we go into 1.3, Solve by Factoring, Classwork Homework Part 1. Solve by Factoring, Classwork Homework Part 2. Solve by Factoring, Classwork Homework Part 3. So there is your first week there. That's 36 pages of worksheets and homework sheets. So it's hefty. And then our standard here for Week 1, Algebra 2, Classwork, Common Core 9 through 12, FIF.7, graph functions expressed symbolically and show key features of the graph by hand in simple cases, and using technology for more complicated cases. Graph linear and quadratic functions and show intercepts, maxima and minima. So we get into that for Week 1. And we got our other Common Core is 9 through 12 A.SSE.3a, which is factor a quadratic expression to reveal the zeros of the function it defines. And here are our learning targets, which is important. Graph linear, quadratic, and exponential functions. Identify and interpret key features, intercepts, intervals of increase, decrease, maxima, minima, and end behavior. And compare different types of functions using graphs. So just by looking at a graph, you can tell what kind of function it is. That's a learning target. Resources, materials, animated PowerPoints, and/or MP4 versions of lessons, classwork, homework, quiz, tests, worksheets, activities, and tasks. So all class worksheets are closed exercise from PowerPoints or MP4s, homework quizzes, and test assignments available online with corrections provided after submission dates. And then access for all. Available in over 100 languages, available online 24/7, closed caption for hearing impaired, audio for sight impaired. And then, so our points for classwork for Week 1 is 268 classwork points. Note-taking, 96 points in note-taking. Homework is 426 points of homework. And then there's no quiz points. There is a pretest, which is worth 60 points. And that comes to a total for Week 1 and 910 points for Week 1. So let's go into furthermore modifications, accommodations. So we got available online via Google Classroom interface. That is grades through Google. grades, classwork, homework, quizzes, tests, Zoom tutoring on request. And let's go into our pretest here is worth 60 points. And then we go into 1.1, our first real lesson of Algebra 2, graph quadratic functions in standard form. So you got 42 points here of classwork, 4 points of note-taking. And then 1.1 Part 1 homework is 70 points, 14 points in note-taking. And then 1.1 Part 2, 20 points classwork, 10 points note-taking. And then our homework, we got Part 2 homework here, is 56 points, 10 points in note-taking for that. And then we got 1.1 Part 3 classwork, 30 points, 4 points note-taking. What's our predominant standard here for this section of week 1? It's probably through Monday or Tuesday. We got Common Core 9 through 12, FIF 7, graph functions expressed symbolically and show key features of the graph by hand in simple cases and using technology for more complicated cases. So we get into graphing big time, to say the least. Going on here into week 1, we go into 1.1 Part 3 homework, 64 points, 4 points note-taking, with the same FIF standard. And then we go into 1.2 Part 1 classwork, 31 points, graph quadratic functions in vertex or intercept form. And then we go into our homework, 1.2 Part 1 homework, 58 points. And then 1.2 Part 2 classwork, 22 points, 9 points of note-taking for 1.2 Part 2 homework, 108 points for Part 2 1.2 homework. And then we go 1.2 Part 3 classwork, 26 points, 10 points in note-taking. What's our predominant? Again, it's FIF 0.7. Graph functions express symbolically and show key features of the graph by hand in simple cases and using technology for more complicated cases. We're not done yet. We're still in week 1. We go 1.2 Part 3 homework as 76 points for your 1.2 Part 3. Then we go into 1.3 classwork. Part 1 is 34 points, 9 points note-taking. Solve x squared plus bx plus c equals 0 by factoring. So we get into factoring quadratics. And we have Part 1 here, homework, 56 points of homework. 19 points in note-taking here for your Part 1 homework. And then we go 1.3 Part 2 classwork, 24 points classwork, and then 14 points in note-taking. And then Part 2 1.3 homework is 62 points of homework for 1.3 Part 2. And 1.3 Part 3 classwork, 22 points, 11 points note-taking. What's the predominant Common Core standard is SSE.3a, factor a quadratic expression to reveal the zeros of the function it defines. So that's the big part of 1.3. And then finally here, to finish week 1, we got 1.3 Part 3 homework, 88 points of homework, 11 points of note-taking. And so our learning targets, let's don't forget those, would be a lot of this part of the week 1 would be A.SSE.3a, factor a quadratic expression to reveal the zeros of the function it defines. So that's really the latter part of week 1.